into uh, the forces that shaped you, whom or what do you credit with the values that you've carried with you throughout your life?
Well, in addition to my family, I was fortunate to have a very strong family with a brother and mother and father who were able to devote their attention to us. I also was privileged to go to a Jesuit high school here in Boston, Boston College High, and on to the College of the Holy Cross up in Worcester, where the themes of service to others and sacrifice before self really were hammered into us over and over again. So that's how I kind of shaped my life from those days forward.
You talked about the decision to join the Navy after talking with a couple of your best pals. When you joined the Navy, when did you find out that you were going to Vietnam, and
Well,
what did you think about that?
First of all, the story about joining the Navy, there's a little more to it than that. I had wanted to, out of high school, I had applied for the Naval Academy and the Coast Guard Academy because I always had a love of the sea, the ocean, and I wanted to be in a seagoing service. So, and I couldn't get in because my eyesight was pretty bad in those days. But to jump ahead, I was commissioned in 1960, and I actually spent about 8 years on normal Navy duty ships around the Pacific and the Atlantic, including a tour over the coast of Vietnam. And then after that tour over off the coast of Vietnam is when I decided to volunteer to go to Vietnam in 1968.
So once you got to Vietnam, you were in country for how long before the action in which you earned your medal?
About 9 months. I was in an Army-Navy operation on the Delta, the Mekong Delta, the canals and the rivers over there, where we the Navy boats, would ferry the Army troops around, put them ashore, pick them up again, provide fire support for them as they did their mission.
What do you remember most about your Medal of Honor action?
I remember seeing a puff of smoke. We were in the middle of a firefight and saw a puff of smoke, and I actually saw this thing heading towards me, and I was so fascinated by watching it that I forgot to duck, and it turned out to be a rocket-propelled grenade which detonated about 6 inches from my head and kind of sprayed shrapnel all over the place and knocked me for a loop, and that's what I remember most about it.
Your story is, like all Medal of Honor stories, is a story of incredible courage and sacrifice. It's a story of love of country and love of family and love of the men that you were serving with. With all the wounds that you had, and you were severely wounded, what motivated you so much to get up and get back into the fight?
Well, I think anybody who has served in the military, you train for the unexpected, and in this case, we had trained for this type of operation over and over again. And when something bad actually happened, like it did in this case, the adrenaline kicked in. I was able to remember why I was there and what my responsibilities were. And one of them was to stop this firefight and get my men out of there. And so that's what kept me going.
One lesson from the Medal of Honor fight, if you were to say the most important lesson you learned that day, what would that be?
Teamwork, because I certainly, if I had been there by myself, or if the men that I was with failed to do their job, then I probably wouldn't be sitting here today. But because they did what they were trained to do, because they followed orders, because they helped me maintain control of the battlefield, we all got out of there safely. It was all because we're well trained as a team and thinking of each other above ourselves.
Great answer. Thanks. Okay, let's shift gear a little bit. Can we show the second short video now?
March or so of the following year, I heard that I had been put in for the Medal of Honor, and I couldn't believe it, really. And people said, well, don't expect it, because almost nobody gets it. And all of a sudden, like 3 or 4 days before I actually was awarded the Medal of Honor, I was told to be in Washington on such and such a day, and because the president wants to meet you, or something like that. I guess about 12 or 13 of us were flown to Washington, and we had a ceremony at the White House on It was May 13th, which is my birthday, in 1970. And very nice, very impressive.
I can only imagine what it's like to get a call and go to the White House and meet the president. What was meeting the president who presented your medal was President Nixon?
Yes, it was Richard Nixon.
What was it like meeting the president?
Well, he was, there were 12 or 13 of us, and he entered the room and then proceeded to go to each of us and stand in front of us while somebody read the citation, then took the medal, a ribbon, put it around your neck, and made small talk and shook hands and moved on. And he came to me and he said, "Oh, where you from?" And I said, "Boston, sir." And he said, "Oh, do you eat baked beans every night?" And I said, "No, sir, only on Saturday." And he said, "Hmm." And he moved on to the next guy. So that was my total conversation with the President of the United States.
I'm laughing because for people who aren't from Boston, I grew up here too. Saturday night was baked beans night in Boston, I think in every house I knew back then, but we didn't eat baked beans every night. After you earned your medal, you stayed in the Navy. You continued to serve. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I had been, I'd lost an eye and some damage to my skull and a few other injuries. But in those days, the Navy, if you were maimed in any way and didn't have all your limbs or organs, they didn't want you anymore. So they said, "You got to get out." And I fought it very hard and was able to stay for another 20 years. I completed a 30-year career, including command at sea and a few other things. But I was very fortunate to be able to stay because I loved the Navy then, and I did for the rest of my life.
So 30 years in the Navy, what was the most important lesson you learned from your time in the service?
Again, teamwork, whether you're commanding a destroyer or on a small boat over in the Mekong Delta or Vietnam, you have to work towards a common goal. You have to help the person next to you achieve his or her goals, and if you do it all the right way, then you're going to have success.
Everybody always wants to know, every time I'm out with one or more of you recipients, everybody always wants to know, how has your life changed since you began wearing the medal?
Well, it's opened a lot of doors, obviously. It gives me an opportunity, it has given me an opportunity to meet a lot of people, to talk to a lot of groups like I'm doing today, which I probably wouldn't have the opportunity otherwise. I've got to know, many sailors, Marines, soldiers, airmen, and Coast Guardsmen, been able to mingle with them and feel part of them. It's able to go into schools and tell the students in the schools the values that I hold dear, and encourage them to stick by those same values over the course of their life.
I was fortunate a couple of weeks ago to go with you on a school visit to your alma mater, your high school. And you do that, and you obviously like talking to the students and the youth of America. If you could just expand on what you just said, what is your message when you go in? You're a big proponent within the society of our character development program. Tell us a little bit about why that is and what that message is for the kids.
Well, I think the character development program, which I totally endorse, is geared to telling people like you who are watching right now, that anybody can do great things, whether you're a fifth grade student or an old man like me, that there's something in you that you can give to your fellow man or woman to help them, to make them better, and by doing so, you make yourself better. And a lot of it is putting others before yourself, community service, moral courage. When you see somebody being bullied in the classroom or outside the classroom, don't just stand there or walk away. Go over and interfere and put that person down, whether you're going to take a few punches along the way or not. It's worth it to do the right thing and stick up for somebody else.
How do you think that message and your visit and the visits of your fellow recipients are received especially when you get to talk to groups of students? And
I think it's very well received, because we get questions back from the audience usually, and it shows that they're attuned to the message that we're trying to get across to them.
You're, in addition to talking to the youth of America about values and about moral courage, you're also a strong advocate and continue to be for veterans' causes. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, after I left the Navy, I came back home to Massachusetts, and I was part of the Massachusetts Department of Veteran Services, whose mission was to take care of those who have served and their families and their orphans and their spouses. And we set up some very robust programs here in Massachusetts, particularly to take care of the returning veterans from the recent wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. They faced new challenges that we older guys did not, such as post-traumatic stress, a lot of traumatic brain injury, educational benefits, housing, medical, employment, and we got deeply involved in trying to help them get their life back together.
The students you're talking to, is there something you think they can do to join in that cause to help veterans?
Oh, I think community service is terrific, and I think, in your community, there's probably a veteran service organization such as American Legion, VFW, your church perhaps, that can be a place that veterans feel welcome and feel at home, and you, even as a youngster, can participate in that.
We talk a lot about the challenges of the future and the challenges facing America. You have a lot of experience talking to kids and teachers in classrooms. What do you think is the biggest challenge the teachers listening today are facing as we go forward into the future?
We're trying to get the message across to each individual child that he or she too can achieve their goals, can contribute to society, can help others. Get outside of yourselves and reach out to others and try to make their lives better. And I think teachers play a huge role in that. And you have to spend the time, obviously, as you all know out there. Each child is different, each man and woman is different, and you have to take the time to know the individual child, find out what makes him or her tick, and try to enhance that.
We're beginning to get questions in now from the people listening in. This one comes from Mr. Fracasse's seventh grade class in Erie, Pennsylvania. After the war, was it harder to adjust than you thought it would be?
Well, I stayed in the Navy, fortunately, for another 20 years, so I did not have to leave the protective cover of the United States Navy. I just continued my Navy career. For the next 20 years, the majority of people I served with knew nothing about my Medal of Honor, didn't know I was a Medal of Honor recipient, and treated me like an ordinary sailor. And I noticed this is from Erie. I'd just like to point out that the character development program started in Erie, Pennsylvania a number of years ago, and I want to thank you publicly for all the work you've done over the years.
This one comes from Roberta Antorino in the St. Helens School, and she wanted to know if you received any other awards.
Just service awards and Purple Heart for getting wounded, but that's an award for being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
And I'm sorry, that's funny. I notice you're careful, and that you're all careful. There are 78 living Medal of Honor recipients today. I've not ever heard a single one of them, you or any of them, refer to winning the medal, your recipients. Why is it that you all feel strongly, and I've actually been asked to make sure that, quote, the world doesn't call you winners?
Well, it's not a contest, and it's not something that any of us strove to set out to do, and we just happened to be in a particular situation and respond in a certain way, and the accolades came our way as a result of that. And a lot of it is because somebody took the time and the effort to sit down and document what I did or other people did, get the necessary witnesses, be a very good writer in some cases, and get to use the proper words, and that's how it happens. A lot of people out there have done amazing things and have never been recognized, and we wear this medal on behalf of them and of all the people who have served over the years.
Thanks for sharing that, Tom. Melinda in Dallas wants to know, what's the one thing that you'd share with parents that they should make sure they impart to their children?
Well, try to live your life, parents, as your parents probably did when you were youngsters. And I would say integrity, honesty, service to others, loyalty to a cause, and service above self.
Did you have any doubts or fears the day you left for combat? This comes from Elk County Catholic School from St. Mary's, Pennsylvania.
Well, you're always a little nervous going out into a potentially combat situation, but again, you have a mission to do. You get wrapped up in what you're doing, where you're going. You want to make sure your men and your crew are all dressed properly with the proper protective gear, that your engines work and your guns work and everything. So you're really focused on that until the first rounds start to come in, and then everything kind of becomes chaotic after that.
Rachel Passashow, I hope I said your name right, Rachel, wants to know if you're nervous when you go and speak to classes or when you speak to groups like this.
That's a good question. I'm probably more nervous doing that than I was going into combat, actually. But I tend to try to put myself in the students' position. I want to learn from them. It's not a one-way conversation ever. Whenever I talk to a group of people, I talk usually a very small period of time and then let them open up and ask me questions and share their thoughts with me. So the nervousness goes away after that.
Mrs. Lizitsky asked a question that I think might be near and dear to your heart. Did you ever write a book?
Well, my wife Joan and I, she's also a retired sailor, we're in the process of writing a joint memoir as we speak. So ask me that question in a couple of years, and I'll hope to give you an answer yes.
Carrie G. from Texas wants to know if you could describe the injuries that you sustained. You mentioned them briefly.
Yes, I lost my right eye and a good bit of my skull and the right side of my skull, and some hand injuries, and that's about it.
Can you talk about briefly how you didn't believe it when you actually were injured?
Well, that's a good question, because when it happens to you, you say, this is not supposed to be happening to me, it's supposed to be happening to the other guy over there. But in my case, reality sank in pretty quickly, and I was able to keep on going.
Teresa Febri is an assistant principal at a school in New York. She wants to know if you had one thing to tell students about sticking it out when the going gets tough, what would it be?
Well, you never lose until you quit, and if you're gonna quit, then you're lost. You cannot get that back. So something has to motivate you, whether it's love of your fellow soldier or sailor in my case, or your fellow student that you're trying to protect, your family member or neighbor. Think of them first, and put yourself in harm's way if necessary to help them out.
Janet Doherty is at the Academy of Tucson in Arizona. She's a middle school teacher. She says, how can an educator guide students to be more careful, more discerning in selecting their role models?
Well, there are lots of role models out there, but I would suggest that you look at the values that these so-called role models amplify, and if it's service to others, loyalty, patriotism, then I would say those are pretty good role models. If it's simply the ability to throw a football or to score a goal or to sing a song nicely, then you may want to look elsewhere.
Thanks. Patricia Mejia is at the Loretto Academy in Texas. She's the librarian there. She wants to know what, in your opinion, is the most challenging value for young generations to possess, to strive for?
Well, that's a tough one, and as being closer to the younger generation than I am, you probably know more than I do, but I would say go back to the old values, really, and try to re-instill them in those people, even though you got all the social media and distractions, and the world is a very distracting place right now, but it all comes down to basics of being a good person, doing the right thing, looking in the mirror every day and saying, hey, I can make a difference. And I would, for one thing I would do is get kids to go outside and play with each other some more, and also to put their cell phones and tablets and all this stuff aside for at least a couple of hours a day and just talk to one another face to face.
Great advice. From Elk County Catholic School, are you still in contact with the people you served with?
I am indeed. In fact, the one fellow that actually saved my life during this firefight, he was a Navy corpsman named Richard. Doc Nelson lives down in Georgia. He actually brought his boat alongside my boat in the middle of this firefight, jumped aboard and stabilized me, and probably undoubtedly saved my life. So I'm still in touch with him. He's not doing too well, but we say prayers for him all the time. And we do get together every couple of years for a reunion out in the Midwest somewhere.
Heather says you mentioned that you had to fight to stay in the Navy after you were injured. What does that mean? What did you have to do to fight?
Well, the procedures were that, as I mentioned briefly, that if you were not 100% physically fit or qualified, then they didn't want you. And I guess part of it is that this was towards the end of the Vietnam War. They were probably trying to downsize and get rid of people. But I had to go through various administrative procedures and convince people that even though I lost an eye and a couple of other things, I was still capable of serving well and being an asset to the Navy. And they finally believed me after a while.
And that means you ended up serving for 20 more years, right?
20 more years, 30 years altogether.
30 years altogether. Nancy Gross is asking, can you explain what the word legacy means to the students participating in the workshop?
Well, legacy, I think this whole character development program started a number of years ago when the average age of the Medal of Honor recipients was getting up there in the 60s and 70s, and probably even more now. And we're all going to go away someday, and we wanted to leave something behind for future generations. And not just medals or books or anything, but values to live your life by. And the values that we believe are embodied in the Medal of Honor is a legacy of those traits we mentioned earlier: patriotism, service to others, integrity, loyalty, that type of thing.
What would you want, and I think that last question leads to a bigger picture question, which is what do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, just that I was a man of integrity and a good man, a good father, good husband, good citizen.
Do you have, are any of your children or their children tuned in today watching this?
Gee, I don't know. They're all working, so they probably don't have time. Well, I know you guys are working too, but in a different environment.
We'll send them the replay link. I saw another good question that just came in, which moves us to a little bit of a different subject. I mentioned we had several different programs at the foundation that help us perpetuate the legacy of the medal and the values it embodies in the men who wear it for others and wear it proudly. One of those programs is called the Citizen Honors Program. This question is, are you actively involved with the Citizen Honors Program Awards?
Yes, as a Medal of Honor recipient, we receive the nominations, and we have groups of us or panels to kind of whittle them down to pick the semifinalists and the finalists and all. And I was involved on two different years. And I'm not sure how much you know about the program, but we give those awards to ordinary citizens who do extraordinary things. For example, a year or so ago, to a young student out in Washington State who, when confronted by a gunman in the classroom, actually talked this guy into putting down his weapon and saving the lives of a number of students. A school crossing guard here in Boston was one of the first ones, Mrs. Crowley, a number of years ago, who threw herself in front of a vehicle in order to save a child. So people are out there doing great things every day. We just want to try to recognize that.
It's a great program. It's 8 or 9 years old, I think, for an ordinary citizen to get recognized by America's truest heroes has special import. If you're interested in learning more about the Citizen Honors Program, go to our website, cmohf.org. Click on the button for the Citizen Honors Program. Nominations for the 2016 awards are now open. If you have someone in your family, someone in your community, a friend, someone at your school who you think has done something extraordinary in the course of daily lives, making a commitment to serve others or sacrifice for others, send the nomination in.
And I'd like to point out that of the 3 awards we give every year, 2 are for specific acts of bravery, and 1 is for long service in a particular cause.
Here's another really good question, Dana. Here's another really good question from one of the students out there that says, who is your role model?
Oh, well, I think growing up, Mother Teresa was one. My father was one. And a couple of the Jesuit priests I had along the way in high school and college. One particular fella was not a priest, but he was a civilian teacher. He later became a priest, but he'd been a China Marine, went to China after World War II, enlisted in the Marine Corps, and came back and taught at my school, and he was tough as nails. You didn't mess around with him. I tried the first day of class and was put up against the wall, but I learned so much from him about teamwork, about bravery, about doing the right thing. That his name is Charlie McCoy. He's not with us anymore, but he was one of my role models.
A follow-on question is, how do you define commitment? What does commitment mean to Tom Kelley?
Well, it means not just talking the talk, so to speak, but it means giving up your time, giving up your energy, not even necessarily just giving up money. Anybody can give money if they have it, but taking the time to serve meals to people less fortunate to you, to go into a homeless shelter and just talk to people, make them feel like human beings again. It takes energy and it takes time, and it's sometimes not the most fun thing in the world to do, but if you can make somebody just a little bit happier by doing it, then it's well worth the effort.
Rebecca Remington in New York is interested in your passion for veterans. She wants to know, how would the country be different if veterans in the past had the same services that veterans today have?
Well, I think over the years the amount of benefits that veterans have received have kind of come and gone a little bit. At the end of World War II, there were terrific programs, the GI Bill and all, which enabled people to go to college, to buy homes, get jobs and things like that. Then later, around the Vietnam era, the programs were weakened a little bit, and a lot of people slipped through the cracks as a result. I think nowadays we've turned it around once again, and the various veterans organizations, the Veterans Administration, are doing a much better job of solving the real problems that veterans have: healthcare, mental health care, substance abuse, employment, housing, medical care, education. And they're putting their efforts in trying to solve those problems and make them available to veterans, and I think they're doing a pretty good job right now.
I might point out to all of you who are watching us and participating today that Tom is a Medal of Honor recipient, as we've already said. He's also the president of the Congressional Medal of Honor Society. That's an elected position. He ran unopposed at the Society's elections last month at the convention here in Boston. As the president of the Society, he makes a lot of the decisions and leads the board through the plans for how the Society is going to evolve and what the Society is going to task its foundation to do. So he'll have a really important role in selecting recipients to participate in those panels that he alluded to when we go through the process of citizen honors. We had more than 100 citizen honor nominations last year. We think we should have 2 or 3 or 5 times that many, because there have to be 2 or 3 or 5 times that many people out there every single day doing extraordinary things. So I look forward to working with Tom when we get to the process, when the nominations close and we start reviewing them and having it's a 3-tiered review. We review at 3 different levels, and in the final 2 reviews, recipients make those decisions. America's truest heroes are deciding who gets those Citizen Honors Awards. Okay, back to the questions. I asked you a little while ago what was the number 1 lesson you learned in your time in the Navy. One of the people watching wants to know, what was your favorite memory of your 30 years in the Navy?
I think my favorite memory was I commanded a destroyer for a couple of years, and to know that I was responsible for the safety and well-being of the 300 men, they were all men in those days, on board, and kind of molding them into a team so we're all trying to do the same thing towards the same end. That was a great challenge, but it was also very, very rewarding. I made some very strong friendships, which I still have to this day, and I think that was probably the highlight of my my Navy career.
How big was your crew? How many people?
About 300.
300 people worked for you. Did you talked about friendships that have endured from that memory. Did you have a best friend when you were in combat? And you talked about the guy principally responsible for helping you when you got wounded. Did you have a best friend?
Excuse me, I have a cold. I thought I was going to sneeze. I had actually just gone to a brand new unit a couple of weeks before, so to answer you very honestly, I did not have a best friend in that particular unit.
Okay. I want to get back a little bit to the future and the legacy. As the president of the society, how do you, where do you want the society to focus its time and energy? I mentioned there are 78 living recipients. Only 9 of them are, 40 or younger. The 9 recipients from the Afghanistan war. Where do you think your focus as president of the society is going to be in, on what programs?
Well, my focus is really twofold. One is the health and welfare and well-being of the living recipients, to do everything we can to make sure that their lives are as happy and stress-free and financially secure as possible. Do whatever we can to get them the health care they need for both them and their families. That's my number 1 priority, and I have a lot of friends doing that, including the Medal of Honor Foundation is totally supportive. Our second objective in the society is to support this character development program, and we do whatever we can to do that by having recipients do what I'm doing today, to go out into schools around the country, using their own time. I'm lucky, I'm retired, I have plenty of time on my hands, but a lot of these youngsters, younger recipients, they have jobs, they have families, they have school, they're giving up a lot to go out and spread the word as I am doing today. And so I applaud them for what they're doing, and encourage them to continue doing it while keeping in mind their families and lives are number 1 in their lives.
To give everyone a little bit more perspective on the program, we have training events all around the country. We've taught the Medal of Honor character development program curriculum in 38 states now. We've taught it to well over 6,000 teachers. We know it's in hundreds of schools around the country. We get anecdotal feedback from teachers and their students about the lessons they've learned and the changes it has helped make in their lives. Our goal, those may seem like big numbers, but our goal is to teach character development to every student in America. So we have a long way to go. if any of you want to help us in that process, please do. The curriculum is available a number of different ways. You can go on our website and download it. You can go on our website and ask us to send you the DVD kit for your school, or one for each teacher. There are a number of ways you can get access to the curriculum. So back to questions again. How old were you when you joined the Navy? Fresh out of college? So
I was 21.
21?
Mm-hmm.
How does the concept of family or team fit into a middle schooler's life, both inside and outside of school, and how do you advise that people can promote that kind of loyalty, family and team, in the school and outside the school?
Was that a fifth grader?
No,
No.
I can't tell.
Okay. Well, there's plenty of
It's a
opportunity.
student, though.
Plenty of opportunity to act as a team, whether it's in an athletic field or in a drama club or a musical group or a French club, or just getting together and saying, hey, let's this Saturday go down to the local park and clean it up, and or go over to that homeless shelter and see if they want us to, sit down and talk to the residents over there, or to the old folks home who may not have anybody to talk to. Let's go over there and do that. That's kind of a team-oriented thing, I think. Maybe your family could join you, or your church group, or whatever. But I think there's lots of opportunities over there. There are lots of people out there that need our help, and those of us who are in a position to be in a position to give our help, it's a sin not to do it.
Do you always keep the medal with you, and do you always wear it when you go out?
No, I do it only for official functions such as this, because I know this particular function today is oriented around the Medal of Honor. But no, I don't carry it with me. I used to keep it in a plastic baggie. Now I have a little velvet bag and I keep it in. And only wear it for kind of semi-official events.
When you wear it, do people generally recognize what it is?
Oh yeah, I only wear it at events that it's oriented around the Medal of Honor anyway, so
Okay.
people are there know what it's all about.
What do you like to do in your free time?
Well, I love to read. I like to work out. I like to help my wife write our memoir, and I like to attempt to play golf. I don't do it very well, but I try every now and then. And just spend time with family, friends, and neighbors.
And you're from Boston. Do you have a favorite football team?
Oh, let me see. What's that team? Well, they're actually in Foxborough. I think it's called the Patriots. I've been a Patriots fan since they were the Boston Patriots back in 1960.
We're getting an awful lot of people who are sending messages saying thank you for your service, thank you for
Well, thank you for
time
listening
today.
too.
Here's this is Melanie. She's 11, and she's a girl.
I figured that.
And is it okay that even if she's 11 and a girl, that she wants to be in the Navy one day?
Oh, of course, Melanie. In fact, I'm not a recruiter, but there's a program called the Sea Cadets, which is in many, many communities around the country. In high schools, there is a junior ROTC for both the Army, Marine Corps, Navy, and Air Force. If you're interested, do that. Read some books about the Navy. Read about women in the Navy. The first woman admiral, Grace Hopper. And now there are many women admirals and senior chief petty officers. And get in shape, stay in shape, and stay motivated.
When you and I both joined the service in another century, there weren't all that many opportunities for women to serve in the services. In today's Navy, can a woman have any job and be anything she wants to be?
In today's Navy, as Ron said, when I joined the Navy, the only time you saw a woman was in the admin office on the base or something. She'd be a clerk typist or something, or maybe a nurse in the medical facility, and that was about it. And now every opportunity is open to women. I think the latest I heard was that they're considering opening up the Navy Special Warfare to women. I don't know if that's a certainty yet, but similar to what the Army Rangers just did, allowing women to graduate. But virtually every field is now open to women.
Good. And I think maybe we should apply for a stipend for you from the Naval Recruiting Service, because I have another question here about getting into the Navy. Do you have to have good grades to get into the Navy?
You have to have good grades. That's important. You have to be in physically good shape. That's important. But you have to be motivated. You have to be motivated to serve your country, to advance yourself, and to be willing to put your neck on the line. That's what the Navy's really looking for. But grades and physical abilities are also very important.
We have some people who want to know a little bit more about you. How many kids do you and Joan have?
We have 4, 3 girls and a boy. They're spread all over the country.
And grandkids?
2 boys down in New Jersey.
Have you ever had a friend die in combat?
I thought you were going to say, do you ever have a friend?
No. I'm just going with the questions, and I didn't give a good transition there. Sorry, but have you ever had a friend die in combat?
I had, yes, I had over in Vietnam a couple that I was close to, and in this recent Iraq War, I had a young man whom I had encouraged to go into the Marine Corps, and he did, and he got killed in action. So, yeah, I have a very close friend.
If you had to dedicate the Medal of Honor to someone, who would you dedicate it to?
Probably to all the men and women who served over the years, who did great things, or performed ordinary service or extraordinary service, and never got recognized for their service, but their service is equally as important as mine.
Suma Satish, if I said that right, is a teacher tuned in from a classroom in India.
India, wow.
And she would like to know, how could you have earned such a great honor?
Well, I hate to sound glib about it, but it's being in the right place at the right time, or in a certain place at a certain time, and something bad happened, and you were just able, through your training, your energy, your background, your values, to step in and do the right thing. And as I keep saying, any one of you can do the same thing.
And everyone that the Medal of Honor recipients recognize through the Citizen Honors Award every year has basically done the same thing in one way or another. Mm-hmm. Not in combat. The only difference is they didn't have to join a service, they didn't have to go into combat, they weren't on the battlefield, but they displayed the same characteristics and the same courage and the same commitment and the same service that the Medal of Honor recipients have. Mm-hmm. What do you think? We've talked a little bit, or quite a bit, about your passion for veterans issues.
Uh-huh.
This question is, what is the most important social issue for veterans today?
Well, it's the challenge of reintegrating back into society. When a soldier is deployed with a unit in combat, or even not in combat, they're part of a unit, they're part of a team, they're part of a family while they're there. And when they return from that situation, they come back here to the family they left behind, or the neighborhood they left behind. They sometimes feel like a total stranger, because the people they've been relying on for the last year or so are no longer there. So in many cases, people withdraw into themselves. They turn to other means of coping, which are not always the most healthy. And I think what we have to be sensitive to is that everybody coming back has a challenge in reintegrating. We have to find out what that challenge is to make them feel like they can seek help and get the help that they need.
Would you be willing to make more sacrifices for other members of the Navy?
Would I be willing?
Yeah.
I think yes, I would. Mm-hmm. If somebody could be more specific about what sacrifices, but I've always tried to put service before self. succeeded most of the time.
So you're talking now to some number of teachers and educators and parents and students.
Mm-hmm.
Summarize, if you would, your kind of top 3 messages for that group who's tuned in.
Well, any one of you, students particularly, can be great. You have it in you. You have to find it. Parents and teachers, that's where you step in. Help them find what will make them great, and then give them the tools they need to be able to carry it out.
Powerful stuff. And if you just come back and touch on the character development program one more time, this is a character development webinar. Just kind of tell us one last time why it's important and what the hope is.
Well, the hope is to reach everybody, and it's not just for children, but not for high school children or middle school or elementary school, but their parents, their neighbors. Everybody has it within them to do great things, and if you live by the qualities that we think are embedded in the Medal of Honor, whether it's loyalty, integrity, service to others, patriotism, honesty, if you live your life that way, then you can be a great person and do great things.
I have 2 last questions as we run out of time. One of them is this person wants to know, did you have a favorite teacher in all your years in school, and why was that teacher your favorite teacher?
I mentioned one I had in high school who was tough as nails and kind of knocked some sense into me, and he was one. But I think my very first grade teacher, believe it or not, I remember her name, Miss Young, and she was just a loving woman. They were all Miss in those days, of course. They weren't allowed to be married, I don't think. But she was just able to reach the kids and make us all feel important, even in the first grade.
And the counterpart to that is, what is the number 1 lesson you learned at home from your family?
Oh, from my family?
Yeah.
Love each other. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And be honest. Don't hide things.
I think we're coming up on the end of our time, Tom. I just wanted to thank you for joining us, being willing to tell your story and answer all these questions, and talk to the teachers and the kids and the parents who
I've enjoyed it. Thank
today.
you very much for the opportunity.
And just one last reminder for all of you watching. On the screen you'll see a slide that has our website information. It's a great place to go and learn more about the Character Development Program, to learn more about the Citizen Honors Program, to learn more about how you can get more involved in these efforts. We also have on our website the living histories. You saw 2 short pieces of Tom's living history. If you haven't already seen it, I would encourage you go and watch. It's about 9 minutes long. We have, I think, 115 living histories there. You'll learn an awful lot about the men who are telling their stories, but you'll learn an awful lot more about the passion they have for our country and for the future, and the values that define them and the values that define the acts of courage that earned them the medals that they wear. So thank you all for taking the time for joining us today. Thanks again, Tom, for being here.
Thank you.
Pleasure talking to you. And we'll sign off here.